call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Director Chisholm.
Here.
Director Ariki.
Here.
Director Calandri.
Here.
Director Urasic.
Here.
Director McLaren.
Here.
Phyllis Stannin.
Here.
Kate White.
Here.
And Craig Parton.
Here.
Okay. Next, number 3 is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Adam. I move that we approve the agenda.
Landry, second.
Okay. I have a first and a second. Do I have any public comment on adopting the agenda? Okay, with that, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Chisholm.
Yes.
Director Ariki.
Yes.
Director Calandri.
Yes.
Director Urasic.
Yes.
And Director McLaren.
Yes. Next, we will go to public comments for non-agenda items. Do I have any public who would like to speak on non-agenda items?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Loretta Smalls. I live in Lake Los Angeles. I guess it's a non-agenda item. It's all about the water theft going on out here. I have a question. What do we do, or who do we call if we notice someone putting in an illegal well? Because there are many going up, and I think they're shallow wells, because it seems like they dry one up and then they put in a second one. What do we, if we can document these and get like coordinates, is there somebody we could tell or talk about this? Because millions of gallons of water is being stolen.
Yes, good morning. This is Matt with the administration staff for the Watermaster. So you can contact the Watermaster administrator, and our contact information is on the website, and you can reach out to us with any documentation that you have, and we'll follow up on it.
Okay, the website is the AVEC?
No, it's the website is avwatermaster.net.
avwatermaster.net.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
If I have a question about an agenda item, I know that that's not for public comment, but if I do have a question, can I address it on that website?
Yes, and there's an information link, or you can call the number listed on the website, and staff can help you.
Okay. Thank you. That was my question. I appreciate you the time. Thank you. I will mute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Madam President, there's a hand raised by Susan Zatar. Susan, you need to unmute yourself. There she goes.
Yes, I did. Thank you. My name is Susan Zonter, and I'm president of the 3 Points Libre Mountain Town Council and director of the Association of Rural Town Councils. And my comment relates to what Loretta has commented on regarding rural communities inundated with illegal marijuana growing operations. And I just want to add right at this moment, we appreciate the help we've received from Congressman Garcia, LA County Sheriff's Department, and other law enforcement agencies. I have grave concerns about the theft of water from the aqueduct, county public works water systems, theft from local water sources like Little Rock Creek, Big Rock Creek, water and irrigation districts that sell and supply water to the illegal grows, and small pumpers privately selling water to growers. I want to feel confident that large public water systems, aqueduct administrators, and small water districts are attempting to address this issue. Like Loretta, I wonder if there are any regulations in place that prevent the sale of water for illegal activity. Smaller water districts might appreciate revenue, but impacts to local communities from this crime are devastating. I've read a portion of the newly released Watermaster report that relates to small pumpers and have concerns that small pumpers, many of whom are still unidentified, can freely sell water to illegal grows. The satellite imagery employed to visually track usage would be unable to identify individual wells through vegetation growth if the water is transported elsewhere. There's a statement that should the Watermaster develop a reasonable belief that any small pumper class member is using in excess of 3 acre-feet per year, the Watermaster can require, among other actions, the well owner to install a meter at the well owner's expense. I don't know what the other actions would be, but I think it's reasonable to suggest a reporting system through the Watermaster and imposing punitive fees, fines, or levies, and not just replenishment fees if illegal activity is proven, and one that could collaborate with law enforcement to reduce water theft and the illegal grows that bring crime to our rural communities. We need all the help we can get, and today we ask for your help in preserving both the precious water supplies and stopping illegal growing operations in the Antelope Valley. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any other public comments for non-agenda items? Okay. Hearing no more, we will go to number 5, which is special presentations, which we have none at this time. I will go to number 6, which is the consent agenda, which is payment of the bills through June 25th, 2021. B is treasurer's report for the month ending May 31st, 2021. C is accounts receivable aging summary as of May 31st, 2021. And D, the minutes of May 26, 2021 regular meeting. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
This is Adam. I move that we approve the consent agenda items.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Director Chisholm.
Thank you. Is there any public comments on the consent calendar? Okay, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Oriki?
Yes.
Director Calandri?
Yes.
Director Urosic?
Yes.
Director McLaren?
Yes. Okay. Now we will go to our advisory committee report. The advisory committee vice chair, Dan Clifford, will be reporting.
Hello, good morning. The advisory committee met on June 24th to discuss the action items set forth in the agenda for today's meeting. The items that we discussed are outlined in the summary of June 24. And I can answer any questions that you may have that are not otherwise addressed in the summary.
Okay. We will go on to our action items, which is well applications, new production applications, and new point of extraction applications. So A is consideration and possible action on resolution number R-21-20, approving new production and new point of extraction applications. So we will have our staff engineer go through these.
Good morning. This is Kate White with TODD Groundwater. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So there are 2 well applications on the agenda for consideration of approval today. The first application is for new production, and it starts on page 34 of the packet. Mr. Bannock is a member of the small pumper class and was granted 215 acre-feet per year of new production, and that's in the West Antelope sub-area. And he was granted that new production use in 2020 and 2021. And that application was approved at the September 2020 board meeting. And he has been supplying water to support construction at local solar facilities and has promptly paid all associated replacement water assessments for past water use. He is now submitting this new application to continue to use up to 215 acre-feet per year of new production in 2022 and beyond. And our analysis is similar to the one that we conducted about a year ago, and we determined that because Mr. Bannock will be required to pay a replacement water assessment, there is no material injury associated with groundwater storage and sustainable yield. The new production is not within historical or current areas of inelastic land subsidence, and there is no expected impact to local water quality or recharge associated with using as well. And hydrographs do not indicate significant water level declines in this area, and there are no known local water level decline issues. And the amount of water requested, which is 215 acre-feet per year, is reasonable for construction of large solar projects. And the Lahontan Basin Plan includes industrial water as a beneficial use for the Antelope Valley groundwater basin. The board may want to consider approving this application for a limited time period, like what we did last time, and it could be for another 2 years. The advisory committee does not recommend approval of this application because a specific solar construction project has not yet been identified. And their summary is on page 27 of this application, of the packet. And I guess I kind of open this up for questions and discussion.
Madam Chair, I had a question for Kate. Kate, did you, I assume you reviewed all of the advisory committee's recommendations and their recitals of various provisions that would impact the decision on whether to approve or disapprove this application. Could you comment on or report back on your findings from review of their memorandum?
Yes, I'm going to actually go to their report. So that's on page 27 of the packet. And they cited judgment paragraphs that said the specific location should be identified. And I guess I kind of feel that Mr. Bannock has said it would be used for solar construction within a 4-mile radius of his property. And so I'm not quite sure how definitive that location has to be.
And is this the same extraction point as the past?
Yes, it's the same industrial well. He's got 2 wells on his property. One is a small pumper well, and the other is his industrial well that's metered. And that has been supplying water to energy projects in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. This is Adam, Kate. In my mind, there is no difference between this. This is a business. And the gentleman that a month ago came to us asking for water to farm land, we essentially asked that gentleman, do you have a business license? Have you talked to planning? Da, 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 da. And his answers were no, 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 no. I have the same concern about this gentleman who is really retailing water to solar facilities. Does he have a business license to do so? Does he have specific area where this water is going to be distributed to? Have we assessed if the use is beneficial, and if so, is the amount of water commensurate with the use? Those are all, because he's just asking for 250 or up to 215 acre-feet per year, and that's it. We don't really know a lot of things about the operation, the license of his operation, who he intends to sell the water to, and where this water is going to be sold at. So I think until these questions are answered, and if the gentleman is at the meeting, maybe he can shed some lights on those issues. I have a major concern with this.
The amount requested, the 215 acre-feet per year, is reasonable for solar construction, and that I've seen that at that level of use at other solar construction projects. So that seems like a reasonable amount. And I know that there are...
What kind of use, Kate?
For construction at the solar projects, and so it would be used for land preparation,
Dust control.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, right, and compaction to hold the panels.
Okay. And then, do you know where this water is going to be used at which solar facilities? Any solar facilities in the AV?
He has not identified a specific facility that he'll use in the future. This year and the previous year, he did identify the two projects.
Okay.
And so I don't think he's actually signed a contract yet, but I know that there are a lot of solar facilities under construction or to be under construction in this area, and they're kind of broken up into phases. And so they'll be doing like their first phase A is one thing, and then they'll do their phase 2, which is another thing, which is another parcel.
Yeah. But would you agree that the judgment requires specifically where the water is going to be used for the beneficial use definition?
I think so, but I think that's up to interpretation. And I kind of leave that up to others to decide. You know, will it be, if it's within a couple mile radius? You know, does it matter if it's, you know, in like U.S. Solar's parcel A or parcel B?
Mm-hmm. Does this corporation or individual have a business license to retail groundwater?
I don't know.
Yeah, again, you know, I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with the request, but I'm not clear on a lot of legal issues and a lot of interpretation of the judgment when it comes to this, because I don't think the judgment really contemplated any of these things that they will come. Somebody will ask for water to be used to be retailed or sold to other to solar, in this case, solar facilities for use. So we need to be very cautious about how we approach this. Definitely, I would not go for like indefinite use of this water. But even with limited use, whether it's a year or 2 years, we need a little bit more specificity on where this water is going to be used, preferably, like you said, if he can get some sort of a contract where he is going to sell this water to. But also, I want to know if he has a license to sell water, and then I need to check with my county council if there is an issue of duplication of service, because we've supplied water to solar systems, and we typically use water that may not be potable. For example, a well that has high arsenic or recycled water. So these issues need to be addressed before we can approve this application.
Yeah, Director Ariki, this is Craig Parton. I share your concerns about the place of use. being left to a more vague standard than was applicable when Mr. Bannock made his first application. And you remember that long discussion whether he was a small pumper who was getting a new production right that massively dwarfed his small pumper entitlement. But he specified a more specific place of use for the material injury analysis. And I think sending it back for delineation of a clear, more specific place of use would be advisable.
Susan, who has asked, could this also be sold to illegal growing operations? Monitoring and enforcement are always of utmost importance. Also, no scraping of land in LA County is allowed by county ordinance, only areas for operations buildings. So she wanted that to be put into the record.
Thank you.
And I have a very huge question in front of me to the engineering staff. How many acres is his unidentified solar project?
I don't know. Since it's unidentified.
If we do not know how many acres it is, we cannot make the statement as an engineering company that is a reasonable number. We have nothing to base that on. If it's a 1 acre project, 215 is a totally unreasonable number. So for that alone, I see a very faulty analysis. And my apologies, because you guys do an amazing job. And I brag about you constantly. But on this particular item, I think we've overlooked it. There's no way we can ascertain if that's a reasonable request or not.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
To ask if this gentleman or this corporation has a business license to retail water, but I will pose that question to our council. Because to me, at least from my perspective, it fits into that beneficial use concern. It's no difference than the other guy that was asking for water to farm a land in the east side. Because for us to determine the beneficial use, there has to be a legal basis for that beneficial use. And to me, a business license to retail groundwater for this solar facilities construction project has to be part of the equation. You can't just go and sell water.
This Director Chisholm, I had a question for Kate. It's my understanding that, essentially they're producing construction water for these various facilities. And I can appreciate the fact that I think the harm analysis that was done is really with regards to the extraction as opposed to the application of that water and use of that water. But I am a little bit concerned about the other items that were indicated in the agenda report. And maybe this is a better question for Craig. In their on page 27 in the advisory committee report, it talks about these paragraphs that require written confirmation of that they have to obtain to get state and federal and local land use entitlements. Is that referenced from part of the judgment, or is that part of our rules and regulations? I'm not quite sure. And were there any written verifications that they are in compliance with regards to their essentially what it is a business that's supplying construction water to to various entities, and all the associated requirements for a business to be able to do that, in addition to the competing and other aspects that are associated with anyone trying to start up basically a water company kind of thing. So, Craig, if you could expound on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, there are those standards that are put forward in the judgment that are referenced in the advisory committee report. I just think consistency-wise, the basis for having this proposal come back again is the vagueness of the place of use designation, so that the material injury analysis can take place with more confidence that we know what the end purpose is and any regulatory conditions that need to be met. I don't know what kind of permit is required for him to transfer water for use on road conditions and dust abatement and construction purposes. But I think the maybe cleaner, better way to do this is to start with the very language of the judgment and rules and regulations relating to new production, and get some drilling down of the place of use and specifics as to what where that water is going to be applied. This somewhat dovetails to the memo that's in your board packet at the end of the packet relating to amendments to the rules and regulations, section 14, dealing with new production. We've gone around on this for several months, and the language is back before the board for review and setting it up for public hearing next month. But we've tried to tighten up the rules and regs with respect to new production applications so that there's a real penalty involved if there's a violation of the place of use or other requirements. And that will be something that I think would be beneficial to have in place as soon as possible.
This is Director Chisholm again. I agree with you with regards to your comments, Craig, but I also would think that we may want to have some land use clearance records or a letter or something to that effect on these applications where, that the actual use is consistent, that their land use, that it's a permitted use within that particular land area. Maybe this isn't zoned for, a commercial type, ag water, construction water application. So I think if we're looking at this, not only on this particular matter, but also on future enforcement matters that have been talked about this morning on other matters, having that land use regulation part of it as cleared by the county, so that the board knows that this is an acceptable land use for this particular water or this area, I think would be beneficial.
Yeah, there's specific reference in the judgment to written confirmation that the applicant has complied with all applicable rules and regulations, local laws, federal, state, county. So that's consistent with your comments, Director Chisholm.
Yes, I completely agree with you, Director Chisholm. Even for a hauler, they're supposed to have a conditional use permit from the regional planning to haul water. So there has to be some sort of a permitting to sanction these activities that has to deal with zoning issues through LA County Regional Planning or one of the cities if these facilities are within either the city of Lancaster or Palmdale. Thank you for bringing that up.
So Susan also weighed in on that with asking, does Lancaster City or county regional planning via the conditional use permit process require a licensed water supplier. And also perhaps the Watermaster should be on consultation list for project applicants and recommend conditions for the CUP.
This is Derek, and I would make a motion, or just to move this forward, is push it back to the applicant to clarify, as council said, the place of use and any other information that council would like to have informed, and then we can move on.
Do I have a
I'm
second
fine with
motion?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We just need to be a bit specific of what we want from the applicant. The specificity of where this water is going to be used is good to allow us, or to allow our engineer to do the material engineering analysis. Also, some sort of contracts that he can provide, but also all these legal requirements that was mentioned by our council, that whether it's from planning agencies or wherever he needs to get the permit to operate a retail operation, he needs also to attach those as part of the application. We need to be clear on what this operation is, where the water is going to be applied, in what quantity, and what specifically those entities that he's going to be selling those water for.
Okay, so Adam, that was a second, and I know
It's a second. We just, like I said, I want to be specific of what we're asking him. I don't want him to come back with half of the information, and we find ourselves debating if we should, I don't want him to be back and forth and back and forth. I want him to come back once with all the needed information that will allow the board to make an informed decision.
Yeah, Adam, I guess my concern is we're asking for things that I think we need to ask council to give us guidance on. I don't know what we should be asking for, if we need to actually see the physical license or not. That may not be in our purview. So what I'm trying to address is, I know that council acknowledged place of use is the primary one. If he sees other ones that are fit, to add those as well.
Yes, I heard him saying also local regulations and laws. And that was the concern that I have. I still think it's applicable, as Director Chisholm articulated. It's applicable in this case, that we need to know that it's consistent with local, county, cities, ordinances, the operation that he's running. Because otherwise we're participating in something that may not be legal. Proving water is just very minor thing. Yeah. But it's a bigger picture.
Well, instead of doing it on the fly at the meeting, why don't I work with staff to get a response from Mr. Bannock related to the motion to send back this application, so that he has some specific guidance about what the board is looking for.
Perfect.
Sounds great.
With that, I have a motion and a second to table this item. Do I? Oh, okay. All right. So we are gonna go on to the next item. Should I do, but should I do any other public comment on that before we go on?
Do we have to vote on the motion?
So we're moving that, and I just need it to know if there's any public comment on what we decided on the Ron Bannock new production before we go on to U.S. Solar.
Hello?
Yes. I can hear you.
Yes, I have a question about that. When you were talking about damage assessments, I just took some photos from one of the grow operations that got evacuated, and they've left behind some considerable damage to the desert. My question is, do we really need any more solar farms right now? They use a massive amounts of water, and they also do a lot of damage themselves to the desert. Isn't there any way we can table all these applications until we clear out the cartels? That, you know, I took photos of a grow operation that got chased out, and they left behind debris. They've torn down hundreds of Joshua trees, and they left poles sticking out of the ground. They're going to be there forever. So that's just I was just wondering if we couldn't just put on hold all these permits until we get more data on them, and we make sure that we could protect our environment and our water. Anyway, that's what I have for now. Thank you again. I'm going to mute now. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other public comment on that before we go on?
Yes, there is. This is Stan Powell for City of Los Angeles. I just wanted to make the comment that I think the board's discussion has been very good on this topic. I did want to point out one additional issue that bothered me with the application, that in essence, because no definite use has been defined yet, this application really is to reserve water for future use. And I don't think that's what the new production applications are intended to do. That's probably mostly a comment for Craig, but I wanted to put that in. Thank you.
Yeah, very good comment. Thank you for that. That is effectively what's happening here, is a request for a transfer for an undisclosed future use.
Okay, with that, I'm going to ask one more time until we have no response. Is there any other public comment? Okay, sounds like we're ready to go on to U.S. Solar Assets LLC, new point of extraction.
This is Kate again. I want to thank everybody for the helpful comments on the Bannock application. And, you know, the more information provided with the application is always, it's always welcome and needed. So the next application is for a new point of extraction, and that starts on page 57 of the packet. U.S. Solar Assets would like to install a well about 1,500 feet from an existing well, and that's in the northeastern portion of the West Antelope subarea. U.S. Solar Assets is an Exhibit 4 party, and they have 724 acre-feet per year of production rights and about 4,500 acre-feet of carryover water. And water from the proposed well will be used for construction of a solar facility, and it's estimated to average about 300 acre-feet per year, and that construction will occur between August 2021 and December 2022. And once construction is complete, the anticipated production of that well will be about 10 acre-feet per year, and that'll be for site operation and maintenance. And there's a existing well on the site, but it's inactive because of possibly casing collapse and casing holes. But that well has been used in the past for agricultural purposes. And there are 2 other wells on the property, and all 3 wells were properly abandoned, and the applicant will provide the Watermaster with information on abandonment of those wells. And a figure on page 67 of the packet shows the locations of these 3 wells and the proposed well.
Okay.
And
go ahead.
Go ahead, Adam.
No, I was going to say, do you have a copy of the permit, the drilling permit application from the LA County Health Department?
I don't think that's been provided. Let me just flip through really quick.
They have to have the approved application before they can get a drilling permit.
Okay. All right, we will get it then.
Thanks.
once this well is approved by the Watermaster board.
So the location of the parcel with respect to groundwater contours is shown on a figure on page 59 of the packet. and that indicates that groundwater levels are relatively flat in that area. And hydrographs from nearby wells are shown on figure 2, which is on page 60 of the packet. And these hydrographs show generally increasing groundwater elevations in recent years in the wells within 4 miles of the proposed well. And a final figure that we produced for the application is on page 61. And that's an aerial image of the area, and it shows the area sparsely developed with a few rural residences that are over 1,500 feet away to the east, and there's solar fields to the southwest of the U.S. solar parcel. Because this production represents a shifting of production location, there is no material injury associated with groundwater storage and sustainable yield. The production is not within the historical or current areas of inelastic land subsidence, and there's no expected impact to local water quality or recharge associated with the production from this proposed well. Local hydrographs do not indicate significant water level declines in this area, and we recommend approval of this new point of extraction. Are there any questions on this new point of extraction application?
Board members, any questions? Seeing no questions, do I have a motion on the U.S. Solar Assets LLC new point of extraction?
Landry, so moved.
Second by Adam.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any public comments on this U.S. Solar Assets LLC new point of extraction? Okay, hearing none, we are going to do a roll call vote, which has the Ron Bannock.
We'll table Bannock
And
further information and approve U.S. Assets LLC.
Okay. So that is what we're doing.
To clarify, the motion is to approve resolution R21-20.
Okay.
And remove Bannock from Exhibit A of that resolution.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That covers it.
All right.
And with that, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ariki?
Yes.
Director Calandri?
Yeah.
Director Urosic?
Yes.
And Director McLaren?
Yes. Okay. Now we will go on to the transfer applications, and that will be a staff report by the engineer for consideration and possible action on resolution number R2121, approving transfer applications, discussing for that resolution.
Hi, this is Kate again. And the first transfer application starts on page 86 of the packet. And that's a transfer of water from AVEC to District 40. And they have entered into a annual lease agreement to transfer production rights. And a transfer application was approved in June 2020 to cover 2016 through 2020 transfers. And those transfers averaged about 2,600 acre feet per year. And the current transfer application is for 2,672.4 acre feet. And this is to fulfill its 2021 lease obligations. And AVEC has the available production rights to complete this transfer in 2021. District 40 wells that will be pumping the transferred water are in the Central Antelope Valley sub-area. They're within a large cone of depression that is centered a few miles to the southeast. And these are shown, the District 40 wells are shown as blue circles on figure 1, which is on page 89 of the packet. And that figure also shows AVEC wells and AVEC water banks. and hydrographs from 4 wells monitored by the USGS near the District 40 central well fields are shown on the lower left and top center of the figure number 2, and that's on page 90 of the packet. And I'll talk briefly about 4 of those wells. And well number 5201, which is on the eastern edge of District 40 wells, and it indicates a long-term decline since at least 1999. And in the last 4 years, water levels have stabilized somewhat. And that's especially when you look at the wet years of 2017 and 2019. And well 44001, which is southwest of the District 40 wells, that indicates a decline of about 30 feet between 2007 and 2016, and a 10 to 15 foot seasonal fluctuations since about 2016. And another well, number 3801, which is to the west, it shows a relatively stable groundwater elevation since about 2008. And the 4th well is well 4301, and that's north of the well fields. And that also indicates a relatively small declines followed by stable water levels between 1997 and 2020. And since 1997, groundwater elevations have declined about 7 feet in this well. So District 40 has more than 50 wells located throughout the Central Antelope Valley subarea, and it has the ability to redistribute production to areas with higher groundwater levels, and local groundwater level declines have not been associated with known claims of material injury to date. And other water level hydrographs in the Kona Depression indicate that water level trends are highly variable in this area. You know, without known schedules of future well production and without a modeling prediction tool, it could not be definitively determined that no material injury could occur from excessive lowering of water levels associated with this transferred water in the future. However, this transferred water will likely be produced over a period of time and distributed over large well fields. And it seems reasonable that a material injury associated with declining water levels can be managed and mitigated by District 40. Avoidance of historic low water levels would also mitigate the potential for additional inelastic land subsidence, which has been documented in this well field area. There is no material injury associated with groundwater storage or sustainable yield. It is anticipated that District 40 will distribute its production throughout the well fields and manage the wells to avoid local groundwater level declines. District 40 does have the right to pump its water, and that during drought it represents a critical groundwater supply for the community. So given the information discussed and presented in our cover letter, TODD Groundwater finds the potential for material injury can be mitigated, and we recommend approval of this transfer. However, the advisory committee did not recommend approval, and their comments are on page 28 of the packet. Their concern was with the adequacy of the material injury analysis and the lack of concrete information about how material injury will be managed and mitigated. It was also brought up at the advisory committee that this amount of transferred water, which is a little over 2,600 acre feet, is small relative to District 40's groundwater supply, which is reportedly over 36,000 acre feet. District 40 has pumped like 13,000 acre feet to 18,000 acre feet from the groundwater basin over the last 5 years. So I open this up for any questions.
Do we have any board member questions?
I have a question for Craig, just as a point of order, and I know that some of the landowner board members have recused themselves from a vote like this, and we have 2 board members that are parties to this transfer.
Yes.
What's your opinion?
Yeah, we looked at this before, Director Urisic, that they do not have to recuse themselves. This is the same for the landowners. I know Mr. Calandri, Director Calandri, has voluntarily recused himself on matters that may relate to his personal farming operations. But we looked at the issue. I can go back and find where the memo was, but there's built-in hedges against self-interest, self-dealing in here. That if a party, it just takes one vote in objection to strike down a resolution, and that there's adequate protections for dealing with that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to conduct business here. There's all kinds of tangential benefits, burdens going between the entities you represent, but when you sit on the board, you have a fiduciary duty to the board to act in the best interests of the Watermaster and not your own personal interests. So I will recirculate that. It's probably a good idea to refresh our memories on conflicts of interest, but I don't believe there is one in this circumstance.
Appreciate that explanation. Thank you.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions, then we will go on to the next triple M.
Excuse me, this is Stan Powell from City of Los Angeles. Did you want to take comments from the public at this point, or after you cover all the transfer requests?
Well, since you're already speaking, we could go ahead and do those public comments now on that one.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to expand a little bit on the comments provided through the advisory committee. I do think in this application, I have some concerns about the cumulative material injury. And the comparison was provided for the amount of water under this transfer versus the amount of water that Waterworks 40 has been recently pumping. And it's relatively small, but I'm very much appreciative of the applicant providing some really helpful and relevant information relative to cumulative material injury, and the Watermaster engineer including that in their memo. And that information basically is taken from Waterworks 40's urban water management plan, where it shows their average use for a normal year is around 36 or 37,000 acre feet per year. In a single dry year, their urban water management plan analysis indicates that amount of pumping may increase by a matter of 46,000 to maybe 70,000 acre feet. That brings the total amount of pumping in a single dry year potentially up as high as 100,000 acre feet. And so I'm concerned as we have applications like this, the amount of water in this individual application seems relatively small, but what District 40 really needs to do, I salute them for doing the analysis, is to figure out for these dry years how to greatly increase the pumping. And my concern is we really don't, certainly I don't have an idea how big the impacts might be. I'm not sure how much flexibility they have operating their large well field when you're having that big an increase in their pumping. So I just wanted to point out, I do think cumulative material injury is important, and I don't think we've really got a good analysis of that yet. I also wanted to note and agree with one of the comments Kate White made, is that right now we don't really have a groundwater model as a tool to analyze this. And I think this is a big project. I think it's going to be complicated to analyze. And I'm not sure how the Watermaster does that kind of analysis until they have a model to work with. So I just want to make those points. Thank you.
Is there any other public comments before we go on to the next?
Yeah, this is Calandry. I had a question. Let me look at my note here again. You said that the material injury could be mitigated. Could you explain how that would take place in that specific area that has, I believe, has some subsidence issues?
We were hoping that District 40 would not lower water levels below historic lows to prevent land subsidence, and they would do that by redistributing their pumping. And I don't have a specific plan on how that would be done.
I guess so. Maybe this question would be directed at Adam. Obviously, I don't want to get in the way of needs and reasonable requests, but I guess I'm wondering, can the water be extracted at some other point down the line to stay away from that area? And I think probably either the engineer or Adam could answer that for me.
Adam, do you want to take this?
Adam, are you still on the line? Can you unmute yourself, Adam?
What happened?
Somehow or another, I think you muted yourself. So did you hear the question from John?
Yeah, was it for me?
Yes.
I did not. I don't know what happened to the internet. What was the question, John, please? I'm sorry.
Adam, it was, I said I made a comment that I didn't want to get in the way of what District 40 needs, but because that is an area of past problems and subsidence, I wanted to know how the county can mitigate the potential problems and if there's any way that the water could be extracted somewhere else in your system, relieve the pressure off of that area.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the questions. Just as a background, and maybe some of you do know, maybe some of you don't know, this agreement between AVEC and Waterworks District 40 was part of the judgment. So there is an agreement, separate agreement from the judgment between AVEC and Waterworks District 40 for this transfer to take place on an annual basis based on the amount of water that we buy from AVEC. That said, we work very collaboratively and closely with AVEC in managing both the supply from the State Water Project water and the groundwater basin. So for example, during the drought in 2014, 2015, 2016, AVEC was running all their wells in the west side and providing water to Waterworks District 40. And we only use our wells to make the difference that AVEC well field cannot supply. And that's when AVEC got very little State Water Project water. But let's say if AVEC gets 20% of what they're asking for, or 25 or 30%, and they're doing some treatment and some pumping, most likely we will continue to take water from AVEC. We are extremely concerned about the water level in the middle of Lancaster for a lot of reasons. As John, as you said, subsidence, and then also most of the wells in that area, they're drilled deep. And when you lower the water table, you end up getting poor water quality, high arsenic water that you really can't even serve to the customers. So we try really not to pump at all from this middle of Lancaster wells. And we're going westward now, looking for areas. If you all recall, a while back, a site that we were considering for drilling 3 wells at was shown to show some material injury analysis to neighboring wells, and we had to go and look for another site. But it was in the west side, because that was the plan, is to try to get away from the middle of Lancaster and go westward to try to locate well fields for new wells. So it's an extremely important issue for us. Even if we were reckless, and of course we're not, we're a responsible public agency, and decided to pump, we wouldn't be able to serve that water to our customers anyway, because you wouldn't meet the drinking water quality, which is the arsenic. Because when you start pulling water hard, then you're getting it from clay layer that typically has a lot of arsenic. So all what I think those are valid concerns that you all brought up, but I can assure you that it's not going to happen. We're not going to allow it to happen. We're a responsible public agency. There are water quality issues that we have to deal with, and we have AVEC as a partner to manage the water supply for the Water District 40. So it would be in rare cases where we will have to do it on our own without the help of AVEC. But that I can't even envision a scenario of that nature, because even if AVEC doesn't have the water, I'm sure they will allow us to use the wells at their well field to pump, say, water rights that we have. Of course, AVEC will be compensated for that, for the use of their wells. But that's the whole idea of those wells at the AVEC treatment plant. So I don't know, John, I went through a long answer here, but I'm trying to give you some sort of a comfort level that it's highly unlikely that we would just be pumping the wells in the middle of Lancaster without any concern.
Okay, but I guess my exact question would be more if you have to, but who knows how long these droughts will last. If you have to, the engineer said it could be mitigated. How would that be mitigated?
Because there are a lot of wells that we have in the middle of Lancaster. So some wells would create a more negative impact than others. So we can, again, to the engineering part of it, but 90% of our customers serve from the same pressure zone. So we could go to any of our wells, of the 50 or so wells that we have, and pump, and we will be able to put that water in the system that will serve 90% of the people. So instead of pumping, say, the wells on Avenue M or Avenue L, we can go to 50th Street West or some other location and pump from those other wells that are less, not in the depression area, as you put it, and then that water still will make it. So it's just the nature of the area, because it's so flat, it allows us to move water anywhere we want in the system from any of our wells in the system. So that's how we would be mitigated. In other words, if we must pump, we will choose wells that have high water level and areas that have high water level for a lot of reasons. Among them, like I said, the water quality.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Joe.
This is Derek. I guess I have a question to staff and to Kate and Phyllis. And if I look at the comments from the advisory board and in their comments, they kind of underline transfer water is anticipated to be produced, and the underlining it seems reasonable. And I guess my question is, have we as a board, or has, staff and the Watermaster engineer approved a transfer with those types of verbiage before, anticipated, and it seems reasonable?
Hi, Derek, this is Kate. I think that some of the other transfers, were not definitive on how much water they used in that year, but the locations were always known in other ones, the more definitive locations, if that answers your question.
And things are a little bit more straightforward in one way. But with 50 wells to operate in a well field, your opportunities to mitigate are much more widespread. I just know from working with public agencies that have large well fields that there is a lot of flexibility built into the system. They have backup wells, they have wells that they can take offline, they have wells if they're interfering, then they can move their production around. And having one huge pressure zone is hugely helpful with respect to redistribution of pumping. So I do think it's different when there's this level of flexibility, I'll call it, or operational flexibility within the applicant's purview to be able to manage it, number one. And number two, I also think it's a little bit different when it is a responsible public agency compared to a private well owner that may or may not be used to thinking in terms of water levels and protecting the aquifer. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Okay, and Phyllis, this is Andrea. That's a point well taken, but also I take the point that Derek Urasi made to heart. So here's what I'm going to ask. I do not want to stand in the way of the needs of this community. However, I have been elected to protect the community and the water table. So I am going to ask, is it a possibility that we could put conditions on our 2121 stating that they cannot go into any area of subsidence unless it's an emergency situation? It gets approved by the engineer and the board. I would like to have something with a little teeth. I trust Adam. I have learned to respect him and trust him, but I take my job seriously, and I think we should put something in there that precludes them from going into those subsidence areas without approval of the Watermaster and the board at that point in time.
I would second that.
Okay, so we have a first and a second to add conditions onto the AVEC to LACWD 40 one-time transfer.
What I would say, though, Madam Chair, as a practical matter, that would be very difficult to do. In other words, I don't know if this is going to be helpful to Director Clandry or not. There isn't a single year since this judgment have been in implementation that we even came close to pumping our groundwater rights. Because Waterworks District 40's stance and water supply management policy has always been to maximize the amount of water that we can use from the State Water Project water. And then rely on groundwater only to normalize rates and normalize demand. So District 40 has a lot of water, carryover water, above and beyond these 2,600 acre feet. And theoretically speaking, if we were going to be irresponsible, we could still do the same damage with or without these 2,600 acre feet. So it's not a practical matter to impose a requirement of that nature, given the amount of groundwater rights and the operational procedures that the wells come on and off and how, because they're all based on when people need water and how they need water and all that. And then the operators manipulating which well is on, which well should be off. So that's all what I can tell you on that. I just don't think it is a practical issue to impose such a requirement. If we need the water, we're going to pump it from somewhere. What I can tell you, it's not going to damage the basin because, as I've indicated to you, when you lower the static water level, you ended up pumping arsenic, and you can't serve that water to the public anyway. So we, just by that fact, there is no way that could happen.
So do you have an alternate motion?
I'm sorry?
Do you have an alternate motion?
Well, it's the motion is to transfer water rights to LA County based on the condition that our Watermaster engineer have stated, and they are factual. I've indicated to you all that we are planning and drilling additional well in the west side. And this is the same issue, by the way, that came in last year, and we went through it the same way. And I think it's going to happen every single year. So I think there needs to be a trust in a large public agency that have operational flexibilities and practical issues that it needs to deal with. And that's all what we can tell the board. I think that in itself lends a lot of credibility to less scrutiny than if it's one individual at one location with one well.
So what I'm going to do is, what is the pleasure of the board at this time?
Kathy, I mean, this is Derek, just as a point of order, you have a motion and a second on the floor. I think you need to proceed. Council Craig can clarify that, but I think that's a...
Yes, that's correct. There's a motion with the second.
Okay, so we're trying to do these still as two, so then we would just go on to the next part and take a vote with that motion.
I think they're separate requests.
But they're on one resolution. So do you have any suggestions on how to proceed with that since they're on one resolution?
Well, you could take a vote on the transfer request that's been suggested now, and then take the information from Kate on the second transfer request and vote on it, and then amend the resolution appropriately.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any public comments on the motion? May we have a roll call vote, please? Director Chisholm?
No.
Director Ariki?
No.
Director Calandri?
No.
Director Urosik?
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute. I need a point of clarification then. Can you repeat the motion?
The motion is that LA County Waterworks cannot pump from areas of subsidence without approval from the board or the engineer.
That is that's the resolution that I added to it. The restriction that I added to it.
Resolution.
That's correct, John.
We're voting on it with the resolution.
Yes, you're voting to amend the resolution for LA County Waterworks to obtain approval from the Watermaster Board and engineer before pumping from areas of subsidence.
Okay. My vote is yes.
Okay. Director McLaren?
I apologize.
Director McLaren?
I'm very torn on this one. I know it's not going to pass because we need 5 to pass it. And we're going to have to go back and rediscuss it. I see both sides. So I guess no.
Motion doesn't carry.
Okay, so we're back to the drawing board. And I think this is now when I can say what is the pleasure of the board.
Again, I think we should vote for the transfer. This is going to come every single year. We don't want to make it a hill to die on. This is exactly the reason why we want this to be in the rules of regs.
Well, so far we've found a way to compromise. So maybe there is a compromise on what do you really expect to be any stipulation at all?
Yeah, I see though, Madam Chair, I see that the engineer have provided the board with its opinion, with the engineer's opinion, I should say, of factual issues related to the impact of the groundwater basin. And they were positive. Numerous number of wells, vast operation, responsible agency, collaborating with the largest wholesale water agency in the Antelope Valley. I see no need for any. We take our engineer's opinion in all these matters. Yes, we ask questions, but we also take them for what they are. They're the one that's supposed to guide us through this process. I don't understand what is this about what they have to come back and ask us where they're going to pump this water. Like I said, as a practical matter, it makes no sense, even if we want to do that. And this is going to come up every single year from now until we're all gone.
And this is Calandri. According to what I'm reading, the words that I'm reading in my agenda, number 2, on agenda item 8B, number 2, Watermaster engineer recognizes that material injury could occur. And we have consistently, throughout the years, taken that into great consideration and have stood pretty firm on anybody that's requested anything that could cause material injury. I don't believe we can, I will speak for myself. I can't honestly listen to that assessment from the engineer and without making some modifications to the resolution, vote for it. And we know once subsidence happens, it cannot be mitigated.
Fair enough. So maybe fellas and Kate, can you elaborate on that? I mean, can that wording be changed to give Director Calandri some sort of comfort level?
Hi, this is Phyllis. I am searching for a solution at this point, and I'm not exactly sure how best to characterize it. So I will just say this. In general, the area of subsidence for the well field in general is difficult to avoid. And we recognize that it is an issue for the subbasin. What we also recognize, again, is that these water levels could be controlled. And I think that there are so many details in the operation of a public well field that it would be really hard for this board to come up with parameters that limit exactly which wells are pumped when and how much. There's an infinite number of possibilities that would require sort of individual analysis, and I just don't think that's practical. So I'm thinking kind of larger picture here, that one of the things that we always do, and the reason that we do so many hydrograph analyses, and you only see a small percentage of the wells that we have at our disposal that we go through and we look at. And one of the reasons that we do that is to make sure that overall the aquifer, we're worried about the aquifer, not necessarily conditions at one well. And when we do worry about conditions at one well, it's usually with respect to water level drawdowns at an adjacent well, not so much with subsidence, because subsidence is more of a regional issue. And so one of the things that I'm even planning to provide to the group in this presentation that's coming up with regards to the annual report is after 5 years of looking at water levels in this basin, we do see that some of the water levels are stabilizing in these areas where we have seen declining water levels for many years. And I think that demonstrates, number one, that the indications that the judgment is working, and number two, that we don't have these continual declines that we've had in the past. Subsidence will probably continue for some time. There's a bit of a lag component associated with it, but our goal would be for the aquifer not to continue to decline to new lows. So we look at that on an annual basis now, and I can only offer that, perhaps looking at it on a quarterly basis or looking at it on a more local basis would be possible, so that there's a little bit more monitoring of the health of the basin throughout the year and going forward. And then again, I'll just bring up, and I know this doesn't solve anything today for the transfer application in front of us, but I will just point out that as we begin to develop new modeling tools, we will be in an opportunity. We'll be in a much better position to be able to sort of run various scenarios of wellfield operation and determine sort of whether or not there's going to be long-term declines associated with the volumes that we're talking about. So, I only offer it up that we are looking at the aquifer as a whole rather than one well at a time. So I'm not sure if that's helpful.
We do also have a comment from Mr. Cush, Robert Cush. And his suggestion is that WD-40 and AVAC will use best efforts to minimize and mitigate undesirable results and material injury relating to pumping of transferred water. Is that correct, Mr. Cush?
That's correct. Could you repeat that, please? I did not catch all that.
It's in the comment section of your Zoom meeting if you have that available, Mr. Calandry.
Yeah, I think that's actually leave it to Robert to give us a bigger picture view, and I think that's a very good way to think about it. That we turn back to the applicants in this particular situation, who are very well attuned to what we're trying to avoid, and require some responsibility from the public agency to state again publicly that they recognize that there's the potential for material injury and that they will work to minimize and mitigate it.
Does that language sound good?
You know, I'm fine with that, but it's really one of those things where I don't understand the rationale behind it. And it's sad that we came to a point where the largest public water agency in the AD that has been a steward of the groundwater basin all these years is not trusted. But if that's what Mr. Plandry and Mr. Yorozik thinks is necessary, so be it. Because again, this is going to come over and over and over for the next 50 years. And if this language is going to make this item move forward, because we spent so much time last year on this issue, and we're doing this again. And I hope and pray that this board is, after 6 years of collaboration and cooperation, is not at a point where now we started to mistrust each other, because we don't want to be in that. I at least not at this stage of the process. But if that's what it will take to move this item forward, so be it.
I don't think, I personally, that's why I was having a moment to think. I don't personally think it's a matter of mistrust. It's, they feel an obligation, and by the way it's worded, they don't feel they're living up to their obligation of protecting. And we've done so good considering, you know, where we've been and where we are now. Hopefully you don't take it as total distrust. Feeling that they've done the right thing for the right reasons. And I think this is a good compromise, because it just puts something in there, and maybe it's something that you can think of, Adam, that this is a compromise to.
And I'm fine, and I will, because you asked me not to take it as mistrust, and I do respect both Mr. Yurzik and Mr. Clandry. I will not take it as such, but I have to warn against that slippery slope path. I don't want it. I will, like I said, we'll move forward, because again, it's going to come back again next year. And hopefully we're not going to have a different discussion. We'll just include this language going forward forever and ever. And everybody knows that's what's going to happen. You know, I think there was an ample evidence and discussion by our trusted engineer. I told you guys how we operate. And that's why I use the word mistrust, but I don't want it to be misconstrued, but it is what it is. So, like I said, I will not use the word mistrust going forward. We'll just move forward.
Okay, so I take that's a motion.
So somebody needs to read the added language to the resolution.
Are we going to, we'll use what Mr. Cush sent in?
Correct.
Okay. LA County Water Works. Hold on, see this better. That LA County Water Works District 40 and AVEC will use best efforts to minimize and mitigate undesirable results and material injury relating to pumping or transfer of water.
Okay.
We'll add that to the resolution.
Right. Director Chisholm, you're okay with that language?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay, so that's, I gotta.
Adam, are you making that motion?
Yes.
Okay.
And Dwayne, would that be a second?
Yes.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I know.
What does, and I'm sorry, because I'm looking at, what is, and material injury analysis is, just material injury is what the judgment said. What is undesirable results mean?
Mr. Kush?
I think we should just get rid of that part. It means nothing to me. I'm going to stick with the judgment here.
I think it means the same thing. The county's experts in a trial, Mr. Scalmanini, had identified a number of undesirable results in the basin, including overdraft, chronic lowering of groundwater levels, and subsidence. And so it refers to those factors that were part of his report, which was the foundation for the judgment.
I think we should just stick with material injury as it is in the judgment.
I'm certainly fine with that if the board is.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think that's clear. It's consistent with the judgment. It's a compromise. Let's just move on.
Yes, and I'll also weigh in that I agree in this particular situation because the Watermaster engineer considers all of the Scalmanini undesirable results in our analysis of material injury.
Thank you.
There. That's a good resolution of it. Stay with material injury.
So you're both good with that, the first and the second on that?
So read the modification to the resolution, please. Again, Patty.
LA County Waterworks District 40 and ABAC will use best efforts to minimize and mitigate material injury relating to pumping of transferred water.
Okay, you guys are good with that? We have a first and a second. Is there any public comment on this before we vote? Hearing no public comment, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Can the board comment?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I just want to, I know it's been talked, but as a board member, I want to make sure it's clear that this isn't a mistrust conversation we've had, Adam. Or
thank you for saying that. I appreciate you saying that.
Yep, it is completely the way I look at it is trying to just create a parity, making sure that each of us look at this in parity as well as.
Fair enough. Yep. Fair enough. And I appreciate you saying that very much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what, and Adam, I'm going to even go a little bit further with that. I think with the position that Derek and I took and putting this in there, it's going to help other people trust you even more. This is just, there's not any distrust on my behalf either, so I want to make that perfect.
Thank you. Maybe I misused the word. I was just a little bit emotional about it. Thank you. Appreciate that. There you go.
And just for clarity, we're adding this amendment for Resolution 2121 as a final recital, final whereas.
Whatever appropriate. Maybe whereas is the way to go, yes.
A final recital before the words now therefore.
Right.
Okay. Is that agreeable to the board?
Yes.
We'll take a roll call vote. Okay. Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ricky?
Yes.
Director Calandri?
And with the board's diligent work on trying to keep everything unanimous, I vote yes.
Director Urosic?
Yes.
And Director McLaren?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. We did a good job. Sometimes it takes a compromise, and not everybody, it's a win-win when we can still compromise. So we'll go on.
Right. And we all have to remember that as Derek and I sit here, we are not like some of the politicians in Washington, D.C. We vote the way our constituents ask us to vote. We don't just do what we want to do.
We appreciate that, John.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Actually, I think it's a good job. Good job. Okay, so now we will go to Triple M Properties to Goldfield Solar LLC, a permanent transfer.
Hi, this is Kate again. The next transfer starts on page 110 of the packet. And Triple M Properties would like to transfer 15 acre-feet per year of production rights and all remaining carryover water, which is 48 acre-feet, to Golden Gate Field Solar. And this transfer is associated with a property sale in West Antelope Valley. And Triple M property is an Exhibit 4 party, and Golden Gate Field Solar will be an accessor in interest and does not need to intervene. A solar field on the property has been constructed using water from an off-site private well owned by Ron Bannock. And he was granted, as we know, new production to supply construction water to nearby solar facilities in 2020 and 2021. There are 3 unmetered wells on the property, and 2 are agricultural wells, and 1 was used by a tenant for domestic purposes. And Golden Gate Field Solar is in the process of determining costs of metering and or decommissioning these wells, and will notify the Watermaster as soon as this information is known. And we find the potential for material injury as defined in the judgment to be negligible, and we recommend approval of this transfer, provided Golden Gate Field Solar provides the Watermaster with proof of well decommissioning or installation of Watermaster approved meters on each well. And that's all I have for this one. Are there any questions?
Do I have a motion on this?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any public comments on this item? Hearing none, we will go to a vote. A vote.
Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ariki?
Yes.
Director Calandri?
Yeah.
Director Urasic?
Yes.
And Director McLaren?
Yes. Okay. Now we will go on to transfer applications with specified conditions. There'll be a staff report by the engineer, and we are consideration and possible action on resolution number R2122, approving transfer application with specified conditions.
All right, this is Kate again, and this is our last transfer, and that starts on page 144 of the packet. And Calandri Farms would like to transfer 20 acre-feet of permanent production rights to the Antelope Valley Water Trust. And David Leventhal is the trustee of the trust. And the Antelope Valley Water Trust will need to intervene into the judgment since they are not a party. And the transfer is being bought as an investment to be sold at a later date. So the extraction location is not known at this time, and no material injury analysis can be conducted. We recommend approval of this transfer on the condition that Antelope Valley Water Trust successfully intervenes and that a new point of extraction application or a subsequent transfer application is submitted in the future before water is produced, and that future water use is shown not to cause a material injury. Are there any questions on this transfer?
This is John Calandri, though. If George is here, I'd like to recuse myself on this vote again, as stay consistent. George, are you here? All right, I have a dilemma. George told me he would be on this call. Adrian? Okay, then I'm going to refer to Mr. Barton. Is your position still the same, that I do not need to recuse myself?
That is as we've articulated before when this situation has arisen. You do not need to recuse yourself.
Okay, well, for the sake of not slowing the process down, I will stay on the board.
Adrian is on the line if she wants to unmute herself.
I would prefer to recuse Adrian. It's just, I've always done that when my son has had anything on there. So Chairman, can we take care of that? And then I'll come back in.
Sure. So Adrian, it's going to be on this for the vote for this item.
If she unmutes herself.
David, you want to call?
Adrian, can you,
I can't, she has to do it herself.
unmute yourself? She can't be done from this side, but can you respond so we know you are able to respond, please?
I'm unmuted now.
Thank
Yes.
you. All right.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Chisholm, seconded by Director Ariki. And we'll do the roll call.
Is there any public comments on this item? Okay, roll call.
I'm sorry.
Wait, I'm sorry.
I don't even think we've talked about this.
Yes.
I am so sorry.
okay.
I was looking at another motion. I am so sorry.
That's
Looking at
okay.
my notes.
This
My-
is
my
right
fault.
before we started. So right now we have to hear the report.
She did the report. We just need the motion now.
Okay. So do I have a motion on, sorry for the confusion. Do we have a motion on the agenda item 3CI Landry Farms Incorporated?
This is Derek. I'll make that motion.
This is Dwayne. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any public comments on this transfer? Hearing none, please, roll call vote, please.
Director Chisholm,
Yes.
Director Ariki,
Yes.
Director Recca,
Yes.
Director Rosick,
Yes.
Director McLaren.
Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Now we will go on to D, the draft financial audit. The committee had no comment on this item.
All right, I'll take this item.
Okay.
Good morning, this is Matt. So included in your packet, again on page 152, is the 2020 financial audit prepared by FEDAC and Brown, our auditor for the Watermaster. So we have Alec German on the line, who's going to give a brief overview of the financial audit for 2020. So Alec, hopefully you can, you're still on the line, and turn it over to you.
Hi, this is Alec German, the lead for the audit for the Watermaster, and I have Chris Brown here as well, who is the partner on the audit.
Good morning. This is Chris Brown. I'd like to just kind of go through the audit here, hit the highlights, and see if you have any questions. Just a very small, short presentation. I'd like to let you know that we performed the audit in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. We consider those when we're assessing the internal controls and when we're conducting the other audit steps. With regard to the reports, we're providing you a clean or an unmodified opinion. Within the auditor's opinion, there's a paragraph, and this is the essence of the opinion. It says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Antelope Valley Watermaster at December 31st, 2020. So congratulations on a clean opinion. There's another report that is provided, and it's provided to the board, those charged with governance, and it's our communication to you of any issues or any matters that we think need to come to your attention. And I'm happy to report that we did not identify material weakness within the Watermaster's internal control structure. So there again, congratulations on that. With regard to the financial highlights, I'll kind of keep it real high level. Essentially, you have two documents. You have the statement of net position and the statements of revenues and expenses and changes. And essentially, the net position, or you might say net worth of the organization, it decreased approximately $70,000 to $2,001,113 as a result of ongoing operations. The components that make up your net income or change in net position are, of course, your revenues offset by any expenses. Kind of a high-level look at it shows the total revenues decreased, and I'm going to round these for you here. Total revenues decreased approximately $1.6 million to $975,000, primarily due to decreases of $1.6 million in replacement water assessments, $26,000 in variable assessments, which was offset by $19,000 application fees, $16,000 in fixed production rights, and $2,000 in imported water return flow. Offsetting that, as I mentioned, is going to be your expenses. We can see total expenses increased approximately $489,000, $1.045 million, primarily due to increases of $453,000 in replacement water purchases, $32,000 in Watermaster engineering expenses, and $18,000 in contracted administrative expenses. When you take the net of all that activity, the decrease of approximately $1.6 million in total revenues, the increase in total expenses of that $489,000, we have a net change in position of $70,000 that I referred to. So kind of a synopsis how it went. It went fairly well, given the fact that we were having, COVID and everybody's working remotely. I thank everybody involved. Matt, the good folks out at Palmdale, they were very responsive, and it went fairly smoothly.
Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Director Urasic?
Yes.
Director McLaren?
Yes. Okay, now we will go to the administrator's report. State Water Project update.
So, I'm sorry, this is Matt. Before I turn it over to Pete to give an update on the State Water Project, a couple other things I want to bring to the board's attention. We received notice from George Capello that he is retiring from his role with Grimway, and that's effective today. So, as you know, George has served the role of the primary or first alternate to represent Exhibit 4 landowner seat on the board. So based on the rules and regs, we'll have to go through election process to backfill that position. The position will be for secondary alternate. Based on the rules, Adrian Recca will move up to primary, and then we'll backfill based on the election results, secondary. So the staff will work with legal counsel on identifying a inspector of elections, and then once that's identified, we'll start working through the process. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention.
Just let the board know, this is Craig, that we've been in discussions with staff and that's the correct understanding of, we believe, of the rules and regulations, and can give further detail, but a special election needs to go forward to fill in the space as second alternate that will be left open.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions, we'll turn it over to Pete Thompson. He's got a little presentation.
All right, thank you, Matt. So at a previous board meeting, there was a request to go over State Water Project status. And so we have a brief presentation, cover its current status this year and some of the contributing factors. So on this first slide, it shows the U.S. drought monitor, and you can see that we're in our second year of dry conditions in the state of California, and that's both up north and down south. Highlighted in those little blue circles are the areas of interest to the Antelope Valley. That upper circle is the Feather River region, and that's where our state water project originates. All that water comes out of that watershed. And then you see the Antelope Valley region down there. It's important to note that those two regions can be experiencing drought at separate times. So again, much like I think last year was wet down here, it was still dry up north. But this year we're in that second year of dry conditions, and both areas are considered in drought. This is water year precipitation through pretty much the west right there. It shows similar things. It's been dry. And a water year, in case you're not familiar, starts on October 1st and moves through September 30th. So we're approaching the end of that water year, and that end of the water year, there's very little precipitation anticipated through September 30th. So it's unlikely that that situation will improve. This slide goes into the snow water content. If you happen to drive down the 395 in the last couple of months, you've noticed there's very little snow up there, and this slide shows that. There's, I think, less than 0.1 inches equivalent of snow water content through a lot of the areas that supply that water runoff. This is a look at our water year in the North Sierra area, where that Feather River basin is. And it shows the blue bars are the averages for the year, for previous years, what we would expect an average year to be. And you can see the yellow bars are what has occurred this year, and it's significantly underneath that, 46% of average to date. This is another graph that pretty much represents the same thing, but in a different graphical form. You can see the blue line that is cut off in the middle of that blue section. That is our current year. We're at 23.1 inches of precipitation in that Northern Sierra watershed. And what can be interesting here is to look at some of those other years. You look at 2016, 2017 water year, shows us the wettest on record, and you have 94 inches of precipitation that year. So California truly is that roller coaster of when it comes to water. Right now we're on that decline, but we have in recent years seen significant rainfall prior. So one year does not indicate what the next year will bring. This shows the different reservoirs that contribute to the State Water Project and the federal project. And of note is Lake Oroville and San Luis Reservoir. Those are the reservoirs that contribute directly to the State Water Project. They're currently much lower than average. So if you look at the red percentage next to it, that's probably the best demonstration of how low things are. In Oroville, it's 40% of the historical average, and San Luis Reservoir, it's 52% of the historical average. So we have less than half the water supply that we would expect on average in those reservoirs. All right. So state water, the summary here, we do know that we're going to end up with a 5% state water project allocation, and we're not going to have an increase in that snowpack throughout the rest of the water year, and we are experiencing some restrictions through state water project in terms of transfers in order to keep some of that water in those reservoirs available for environmental flows. And to give you a more granular look at the Antelope Valley, that 5% allocation equates to 8,422 acre feet for the three agencies, AVEC, Little Rock, and Palmdale Water District. So it's a very small chunk. That does not represent all the water that is necessarily available to the agencies this year, as we've all done our own diligence in doing transfers and exchanges that free up backup supplies to it. And there's also carryover water that we're all tapping into to help support this dry year. I think as a general rule, one of the last bullet on here highlights that in low supply years, local groundwater supplies will help buoy up that need for customer demands. I can speak for Palmdale Water District, and I believe the scenario is similar for other agencies. You would use that during those wet years. You rely heavily on the surface water and produce well underneath what your typical groundwater production was prior to the judgment. And then during these dry years, that balance shifts more towards what it was prior to the judgment, but not in an excessive way. To give an example, though, and maybe some hope, in those wet years, we have access to a lot more water, and then the typical behavior of the agencies is to bring that water in, bank it, and store it for future years. Available, if we were to take in the full allocation that's available to all the agencies, it comes in close to 170,000 acre feet of water if we were to receive 100% of our Table A allocation. And DWR has recently put out a report on the long-term average for the State Water Project, and it's expected that it will produce 58% of that of our full entitlement, full allocation on any given year. And that comes out to close to 100,000 acre feet that's available for the State Water Project contractors in the Antelope Valley for them to bank locally and use to provide wet water to the different agencies. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. My understanding is that as things change, we may bring in, we may update this report for you.
Thank you. Is there any questions?
Yeah, just Peter, if you don't mind, I know you mentioned the fact that, during wet period, we store the water for dry period and all that. I think it's worth also mentioning, we do the same thing with groundwater, right? In the Antelope Valley. In other words, we don't pump all our allocations when there is plenty of State Water Project water. We try to use as much of that as we can and retain our groundwater rights for years when we need them, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, because I think it's important for the board to hear that, how we manage supplies. So really, even if public water suppliers have the 12,000, whatever it is, to pump, in some year we only pump 3 acre feet, 3,000 acre feet or 5,000 acre feet. It depends on how much we need from the groundwater basin. And the rest of it just stays in there, so that the average is going to be 12,000 over a long period of time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Derek, and I just, reaffirm the value of AVAC's water banking programs as well as other, municipality and district banking and private programs is to, help capture, as Peter mentioned, water when it's available to be used and manage our basin in the manner we're doing it, in these dry years. So fully supportive of continuing that, and if there's more recharge to be done, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think with time, our inland groundwater basin recharge, meaning that the amount of groundwater that we keep in the groundwater basin, is going to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And the reason for that is because we want to ensure that we use imported water supply first before groundwater basin, because I think that should lend some comfort to the board and to the community that this adjudication does augment groundwater supply by this in lieu groundwater basin recharge, or keeping the groundwater rights in the basin when we don't need to pump them.
Yep.
Is there any other questions or comments? Okay. Then we will go on to the Watermaster Engineer's report.
Yes, good morning again. It's Phyllis, and I just have a couple of quick things, and I'm trying to share my screen here, and I will grab it from the administration, and we will get going here. I appreciate the board's conversation at the end of Peter's discussion. 5% allocation on the State Water Project was really putting me in a very concerned mood about our groundwater basin, but I recognize the need for conjunctive use in this basin, and I think that the annual report actually highlights some of the benefits of that conjunctive use as well. So I just have a few slides here with respect to a couple of issues. The first being the forms that you've seen before for new production and qualified state small pumpers. This is just information for the board. It's on page 185 in your packet. It is organized similarly to what you have seen before and has been updated as of June 1st, 2021. It just simply provides information on new production on the left, both by year and also by sub-area, to give you some kind of an understanding. The reason that we have those two columns there is the Bannock 2020 and 2021 transfer for, new production for the solar project was really one of the larger ones. So we showed the numbers both with and without that Bannock transfer. And then on the right, both the chart at the top by year and the chart at the bottom by sub-area shows the qualified small pumpers that have been approved since the final judgment by staff and others. And there are 87 qualified small pumpers that have been added to our list. I mentioned before that we had 2,373 small pumpers identified. That includes almost all of these. I think there's 3 that we don't have in those numbers because this is just a different time table. But for the most part, we are keeping up with our new small pumpers and our new production and incorporating them into the judgment. Any questions at all on this information? If not, I'm going to move to some slides for the annual report. So you have been, I hope, reviewing our 2020 annual report. It was posted on June 10th and contains the same organization that you have seen in previous reports. We thought that was important so that you can begin to have your expectations of where you're going to go within the report to find the types of things that you're looking for. So I am going to share some information briefly about that draft report and then provide you with a schedule for finalizing it. We try every year to incorporate some new items. And so I'm glad to report that we have a few new items in this annual report covering water year 2020. We have taken the opportunity to provide a sort of state of the basin summary. This is 5 years since the final judgment. So we feel like it's a bit of a milestone. Congratulations to the operation of the groundwater basin in the first 5 years of the judgment. We wanted to summarize that and sort of pull some things together to help everybody think about, when you look at the groundwater basin on a year-by-year basis, you can see what you can see, but sometimes it's helpful to have that 5-year look backwards. So we tried to include a little bit more of that information into this report. We have maps now for the distribution of new production so that you can see where those applications are being approved. we have a little bit more in groundwater quality characterization and some additional parsing out of information in the appendices as was recommended to us, not only from the judgment, but also from the parties for being able to find what they need to be able to find. Would like to make this annual report useful to all. But let's dive into a few things. The state of the basin, here we are with reported groundwater production for the 5 years since the final judgment. We have mentioned this before in this meeting today, but this is the third year of ramp down. That is water year 2020 is the third year of ramp down, and it ends on December 31st, 2022. So we're getting close to the end of ramp down and the adherence to the native safe yield within the basin. You can see by the bar graph that's shown to the left there that production has declined since 2016, as indicated by the graphs and also is dictated by the judgment. The 2020 production that we have shown on this graph is actually very, very close to the native safe yield. The native safe yield is 82,300 acre feet, and I think that bar graph there is something on the order of about 83,000 acre feet. I do want to point out that sometimes this is a little confusing, but this is not just all production rights. It also includes production of about 12,000 acre feet of water that has been stored previously in the basin. So we're not pulling completely from native safe yield, and the amount of production rights, I think, is a little bit closer to 71,000 acre feet for water year 2020. And the good news, I think, from the standpoint of the hydrogeology is that water levels appear to have either stabilized or at least in areas of decline, those rates of declines have decreased. And watching that happen in a dry period, and especially in this year of drought, I think is a very positive sign. This is some information on compliance and enforcement. We've talked at various times in this meeting today about the concerns over illegal pumping and non-adherence to the judgment. One of the things that we have had difficulty in achieving complete compliance is both reporting of annual production as well as full compliance with the well metering program. We have about 80% of all of the parties now metered with approved meters. The reporting is a bit inconsistent. We try every year to push forward on that. We also are very aggressive now, and I think staff makes phone calls, and there's quite a bit of effort put into making sure that we get as complete an annual report production on production that we can get. And so you can see there on the right is where we stand with respect to the number of parties in the judgment and the 2020 reported production associated with them. We're missing production reports from about 33 of the parties that are shown there, 7 of which I'll point out comes from the various entities from the state of California.
Nikki, are you leaving?
That have reporting. And then because we have talked previously about, how much water is associated with those who are not reporting production, we've tried to pull the production rights for those parties, and that's shown on the right there. So there could be another 4,000 acre feet or so of additional production. Our sense is that there's unlikely to be that. Most parties that are not reporting don't appear to be producing that much. Will yet to be determined. I know that staff is looking into that in a big way. Illegal pumping continues to be a big issue. Our parties have gone to the advisory committee and said this is something that we've got to get a hold of. Watermaster staff and legal counsel are continuing their efforts to identify any illegal pumping and to enforce the judgment. So there's a lot of effort underway. I know that it's not enough yet, and there's still illegal pumping going on. We hear about this quite a bit, and we are just want to assure the public that we're doing everything that we can, including working with county agencies and others who really are the ones that really need to help us in controlling this issue. We have production that we always show in our annual report, and we have provided that as part of our safe yield monitoring. This figure is from the annual report. It's figure 18 and shows with a bubble map where the larger production areas are in the basin. And I will just point out that a lot of these red dots are actually recovering stored water from our banking projects. So again, pointing out the need and the benefits associated with bringing stored water into the basin. We've talked a lot today about small pumpers, and this is a map that you've seen before. The parcel map here is being revised. Staff has done a really lion's share of the work in making sure that the small pumper parcel list is accurate. In particular, we have several that are continuing to show positive signs for us. We have recognized that we've had a tremendous amount of concentrated pumping in the eastern portion of the Central Antelope Valley subarea, and some of the hydrographs here are continuing to maintain stable or even recovering water levels in some cases. We do have a few areas in the southeast that are continuing to decline. We want to watch that. We do have we do have some sort of scientific uncertainty associated with this area. It's an area of high water, and it's an area where there's some interaction along the boundary. So we're going to continue to watch that. But overall, I think for our 5-year assessment, we are seeing rising trends in the banking areas. We are seeing flattening of some of the declining trends in other areas. So I think that the overall, the basin is looking good. We take water levels from spring of each year and subtract them to do a change in groundwater elevations map and show those with a color raster. And that's what you see on this diagram. The blues are areas where water levels have increased from spring 2019 from spring 2020 through spring 2021. And the areas of browns are areas of water level declines. And when you take a look at this map, you can see some big areas of water level declines. And I want to explain that because this doesn't mean that we are creating holes in the basin. In particular, we have the area of banking in this area. It's the Avex Westside Water Bank along with the Willow Springs Water Bank, where there's been quite a bit of stored water recharge. And so the water that has been recharged was relatively significant in the spring of 2020. There was some water for a change, and we were able to bank it in the basin in the sub area. And we are not recharging as much in 2021 due to the drought conditions that we have. So what happens when we show a map like this is that you're comparing spring when we were recharging a lot of water to a spring when we're not recharging a lot of water. And as a result of that, you will get a decline in water levels from one spring to the next spring. But you can see this sort of blue halo that shows rising water levels around the banking areas. This is the water that has been recharged in one spring and then mounds and migrates out radially away from the banking center. So it sort of produces this sort of halo around the area. Nonetheless, we do have drought conditions, and as a result of that, we have less recharge coming into the basin. We have a reliance on our banking areas, and as a result of that, we see some water level declines, and overall see a decline in change in groundwater and storage. This is table 6 in your annual report. It's similar to what we've done in the past, whereby we take that raster that you just saw on the figure and we assign what are aquifer parameters. In this particular case, we're just showing them as average specific yield. It's a storativity type parameter for the basin. And we can look at the change, the overall change, the average change within each sub-area in the groundwater elevation, assign that storativity value to it to come up with a change in groundwater in volume overall for each one of those sub-areas. And if you add those all together, you can see that we've lost about 55,000 acre feet of groundwater from the basin over that 1 year period. again, not a surprise because of the drought conditions and the decreased recharge coming in and the increased reliance on pumping. But we also looked at that over a 5-year period to give us some kind of understanding about what has happened again since the final judgment. And now we see that even though in 2020, when we had this negative number, overall, when we add our numbers together, we still have netted a positive rise in groundwater levels in this basin. So I think that that overall increase of groundwater in storage since the final judgment is an important point. Now, some of that has been in banking areas dedicated for future use. Nonetheless, I still believe that if you can get through the drought years that we've had throughout this area, 2017 was a bit of a wet year, as was 2019. But to get through this period the way that you have with respect to ending with a positive number, I think is a good sign. We have looked at the areas of indicated vertical displacement. I'm going to call it vertical land displacement, and then we translate that into land subsidence in our basin. This is from satellite imagery data that is contracted by and published by the Department of Water Resources. We access those data online, and we pulled, again, just to give us a sort of 5-year assessment, we pulled data from 2015 to 2020. So this is the difference between 2015 and 2020 on land subsidence in the subbasin. So you can see in the central portion of the subbasin, there's still some indication of land subsidence up to about 2 inches over that 5-year period. And then the yellow areas up to about 1.2 inches of land subsidence over that 5-year period. So there's no negative displacement indicated in the green areas. And so this is very consistent with the historical land subsidence areas that we've been looking at. I think that it will take a while for the subsidence to be mitigated, but overall the judgment allows for there to be decreased pumping, and of course we're bringing more stored water into the basin. So what we would like to be able to do in the area of active land subsidence is to avoid pulling down the basin much further than historic lows. You can certainly do it for a year or so, but then you want to avoid doing that on a long-term basis in order to make sure that you don't exacerbate any future subsidence. The way to sort of end it, there's again a time lag, so we would expect some of that to continue for some time. But if we can keep our water levels above historic lows, then that will assure us of not causing more of a problem in the future for the basin than has already been exacerbated in the past. So those are just some of the highlights from the annual report. We are working on revisions and edits from comments that we have gotten to date. Thanks to everyone who has taken the time to review this report. You all make it such a better report by going through it and looking at the details. We are still so impressed with all of the detailed comments that we get that I think collectively make this report a much better report than we could have done ourselves. They're just some, the bullets above that are just some of the details of the revisions and edits that are in progress. You will see a revised report incorporating those comments coming very soon. We anticipate posting that revised draft sometime between the 6th and the 9th. We're incorporating those comments now. Final comments, please, are due back to us by July 19th. We need to hold a public hearing at the next board meeting in July, the July 28th meeting, where we will take our final comments and give you the information that's in the final report. We need approval from the board at that time to move forward because we need to post the final 2019. Oh, this is still 2019. Excuse me. We need to post that final 2020 annual report on the DWR website in time to meet our August 1st deadline, and we will work with council to make sure that it also gets to the court, again, due to the court on August 1st. So that's it for me. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I know that we've gone a little bit over time. I want to respect everyone's time, but I'll be glad to stick around and answer any
I have a very quick question, fellas.
Yes.
In the east side, is that the same reason because AVEC was storing State Water Project water and you saw that brown spot in the map, or is it because of pumping?
Well, it's a little bit. It's a little bit of both, but around the east side water bank, yes, that's the same condition that we see here, where we had recharge going in 1 year and not recharge in the next. But we do have increased pumping in the area. We also have that occurring from the Upper Amargosa Creek project as well.
Okay.
In other words, no recharge.
Okay. And the increase in pumping, is it due to actual increase in pumping, or is it due to less recharge because it didn't rain?
Yes and yes. I think when there's less surface water available, there's a little more reliance on the groundwater basin as well.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions?
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will move on to the General Counsel's report.
Yes, and I'll cover the main focus of my time in closed session. But a brief update. First of all, we've already talked about the special election that will need to be conducted in order to backfill the primary alternate leaving. So that'll be done. The replacement water assessments will be covered in closed session with my comments there. An update on that I can talk about with you all here about Pinion Hills is in two levels. One, we filed a motion for recovery of monetary amounts from Phelan and other relief. That's a public document and is on file and is in your board packet. We just wanted to give you a sense of the work effort that was conducted in the month of June with respect to that very important motion that's scheduled to be heard July 21st by Judge Komar. The second piece of that relationship with Phelan is the appeal that Phelan filed in 2018 with respect to their entitlement to ramp down provisions so that they wouldn't have to pay 2016, 2017 RWA. That appeal opening brief was filed by Phelan, and our responsive brief is due next week. And we assume there'll be a decision perhaps at the end of summer, maybe early fall, with respect to that. The memo that is for your review in the packet, it's not for board action, but I think the board probably feels like it sees some form of this limitation, a new production right memo every month. For the last 3 months, we've gone back and forth with public comments and other comments from the board about limits on new production. And the memo that's at the last 6 pages of your board packet contains the red line changes that we suggest, as well as a clean version of the memorandum to revise the rules and regulations section 14. So we're looking for comments from the board or the public. There'll be opportunities to do that, but we want to get the 30-day comment period going so that at the July board meeting you can discuss this memo and the suggested revisions and hopefully approve it. What we heard loud and clear in the last couple months was that you wanted the Watermaster engineer to have the flexibility to review the reasonableness of the proposed new production use, and that's been written into the revised rules and regulations on new production, and some penalty provisions if there is lack of compliance. In other words, if we grant a new production application that specifies place of use, and on inspection or it comes to the information of the Watermaster that provision is being abused and not followed, we've written in various remedies for the Watermaster to have, including revoking the application and requiring a brand new de novo material injury analysis. That's as part of the documentation also. So we've tried to beef up this section to deal with the issue of people that play the system, that gladly get a new production right for a certain amount and then exceed it only to pay RWAs as a cost of doing business. Our amendments are designed to discourage that activity. We try to really emphasize that if you play the game of new production limitations and get it wrong, there's going to be a price to pay in terms of revoking of your new production right and requiring you to start all over again. This is still a work in progress. We welcome comments from the board and the public. As mentioned, you've seen a lot of this language before. We're just trying to get it to a resolution. The last board meeting, there was public comment about whether we could limit the new production applications to 1.2 acre feet or some other number. It was our conclusion that the judgment does not allow that. That would require an amendment of the judgment. But there are other things that can be done by the Watermaster to strengthen the limitations section on new production applications. So happy to hear any comments now or in a month when we bring it up to the board for adoption and ultimate approval by the court. But that's the big picture on what the new production rights memorandum is about. Any comments or questions concerning that memo? It must be inerrant then. That, Madam Chair, is the report, save for what we have to share in closed session.
Okay. So then I need a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make that motion, Derek.
I'll second it by Adam.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any public comment on closed session items?
Hello?
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 I'm on the telephone, so I didn't see any of your PowerPoint presentations. Will that be on your website later?
Yes, it certainly will. Thank you very much for the question.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for letting me. Thank you. I'll mute now.
Okay, is there any other questions for closed session items? Okay. We have a roll call vote, please.
Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ariki? Director Ariki?
Yes.
Director Calandri?
Yes.
Director Urosik?
Yes.
Director McLaren?
Yes. Right. We're going to close session. Give me a moment.